Hello and welcome to AFSPA Live, our monthly digital broadcast designed to give AFSPA members and eligible federal employees a place to ask questions and get answers about past AFSPA Talks topics, their benefits, and wellness needs. There are 3 primary ways you can join our broadcast. Join us live by clicking the link in this video description and following the instructions to allow access to your camera and microphone. Then, a show moderator will be available to assist you further. You can ask your question through the chat box on whichever social media platform you're streaming AFSPA Live, YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. If you're not able to join us live, call our toll-free line prior to the broadcast at 888-435-0757 and leave our team a voice message that we may play back and answer live on air. Just tell us who you are and the question you'd like us to answer. I'll see you at the next AFSPA Live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to AFSPA Live, a live video broadcast Q&A session that we stream every last Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Today, we will be discussing the FSBP telehealth services that AFSPA offers. And today with us, we have AFSPA COO, Kyle Longton, and a special guest from Teledoc Health, Lisa DeLarso. So let's go ahead and get started.
Great. And Maddie, thank you very much. And Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. We are delighted to have you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So I want to just take a quick moment here at the top and differentiate a little bit. We're focused on telehealth today. We have benefits for telehealth and telemedicine for FSBP members, but our main focus today is on telehealth. And I see Maddie, is that our first question?
Yes, we did have one that was, asking the difference. So I thought it'd be a perfect opener.
That is a great opener. In the way that we use it for the Foreign Service Benefit Plan, telehealth refers to virtual visits that you have with a provider with whom you connect through one of our designated partners. Stateside, that's Teledoc Health, and overseas, that is the program we call V-Health, which is actually a division of Teledoc. And so you go through those. And Lisa, what's the benefit there? What are the members paying?
They pay $0 for 4 services that are offered: a general medical benefit, a mental health benefit, dermatology, and nutrition.
Okay, and those 4 services are available stateside. Overseas, we have the general medicine and the mental health.
Correct.
Yeah, and so all of that's available, no cost to the member.
Correct.
Telemedicine, though, is a little bit different. And that is a virtual visit with a different provider. It may be a provider with whom you already have an existing relationship. Maybe that's the first way you're connecting with the provider, but they're outside of the relationship with Teledoc or V-Health. So it could be, I do this for follow-up appointments with my primary care to go over lab results. We see a significant number of members use telemedicine for their mental and behavioral health appointments. And those are covered the same as we would cover an in-person benefit. So if they're in-network or if it's a provider outside the US, we pay 90% after the calendar year deductible. And if they're out of network, then we pay 70% of the plan allowance. Members responsible for the balance of the bill. So telemedicine, very similar to in-person, telehealth through Teledoc or V-Health, and covered at 100%.
All right. So we already do have a live question coming in from YouTube. They have asked, this is their first time overseas. What are we qualified for reimbursement when it comes to abroad or living abroad? And how do we file for these reimbursements?
Great question. Not sure if this is specific to telehealth or telemedicine, but generally speaking, the benefits that are laid out in the plan's benefits and in the plan brochure are available worldwide. If we're talking about telehealth, that's the V-Health program. And if we're talking about other benefits, they're exactly stated in the brochure. In most cases, you're going to pay at the time of service, send us a receipt and a detailed receipt, not just maybe the cash register receipt, but we need the information about what services were provided, how much you paid, the data service, et cetera. and send that in. You can do that through our member portal at myafspa.com. I'm sorry, myafspa.org. You can submit that in there. And if you use the mobile platform, you can just take a picture of the documents, uploads to us, and we'll send them over. If we have questions, which happens sometimes because we may need more information than we find once we translate documents and so forth, then you will hear from us, and we'll tell you what we need. And if it's not clear, you give us a call and we'll let you know, or send us an email.
All right. Someone has asked for the website link for Teledoc. I'm trying to see if we have that on hand. If not, one of our members will link to you. But just to go off, a couple more questions we got about Teledoc. Can my kids call Teledoc for mental health services?
So mental health services are available for adolescents. If a child does need services, it needs to be filed and requested by the parent, and then you give permission. You're basically giving permission for your adolescent child to have the services, and you enter the service together at the beginning of the session, giving consent, and then you leave, and then you return at the end of the session.
Perfect. And then a very basic question: how do I register for Teledoc?
Great question, and it's probably if we leave with if you leave with nothing today, it's probably the most important point that I'd like to hit home on. Our program is not the type that you build it in and people come. You need to know about it, and you need to have access to it. And I liken it to the clipboard that you get at the doctor's office, that you really don't want to have to fill out when you don't feel well. So I highly recommend. I always tell my customers to put a few minutes on the calendar when you feel well for yourself and your dependents, and just download the app, access it from a desktop, fill in all your health information, and then should you become ill, it's all done and ready for you to go.
Right. That's a good point, because no one wants to fill out paperwork.
No, and picking and getting ill usually doesn't pick a good time, and like most people, it ends at nights, weekends, holidays, and if it's all ready, all you have to do is request a physician. And just to segue a quick second, for the audience here, in the last month, members that did access service were able to connect with a physician in 8 minutes. So have that paperwork done ahead of time, connect to a doctor, board certified doctor, and you can begin to get care. So getting that out of the way when you feel well is really important.
Absolutely. All right. So if I'm overseas for travel, who do I call for telehealth services?
Okay, you want to take it?
I'm happy to take this one. Yeah, Lisa and I decided ahead of time. She'll handle stateside. I'll do overseas, or we'll meet in the middle on these. So if you are outside the U.S., the program that we have, again, it's through Teledoc, but we refer to it as V Health in the brochure and in our materials. And you're going to call V Health, and excuse me, I'll go over the numbers slowly. I don't know if we have this preloaded for the bottom of the screen, but it's 857-256-3784. Now that's technically a U.S. number. Again, that's 857-256-3784. And there's also, because a lot of these programs with V Health are based out of the UK, and forgive me for looking off screen, I'm verifying numbers as I'm reading them. There's also a number out of the UK, so you're down the country code 440-2034992851, and there's also a website you can go to, and you can download the app from either the App Store or from Google Play. And that's what I would recommend. And the app, Lisa, I also understand there is an effort pretty far along at Teledoc to have sort of one app. So, because right now our members may have a V Health app when they're overseas, and a Teledoc app when they're stateside. And if they're involved in any of the Livongo programs, which are now part of Teledoc Health, they may have separate apps for those. I think there's an effort pretty far along for a single app to combine everything. Is that
correct?
Right?
Yep, that's underway.
Yeah. So that is on its way, but we're obviously they're testing that to make sure that it works for everybody before that is launched. It works across all the different platforms. All right. Good question.
We have another live question. They have asked, is it not possible to choose a mental health provider under Teledoc overseas? I asked for a roster of potential providers to choose from and was told that this is not available to me.
Good question. And my understanding of the overseas program for mental health, it works a little bit differently than it does in the States. So on both programs, you go through a screening, and then overseas there is a effort to match you with a provider who's best suited to what comes through that screening. Lisa, do you have any more insights on that?
I don't for the overseas portion, but I could take that back if it's worthy. Kyle, I can share how it happens domestically.
Yeah, and I'll just say to the member who asked, we will be happy to follow up with you.
Sure.
Feel free to reach out to us at outreach@afspa.org, and we'll get you the specifics of that. But that was my understanding. But Lisa, it'd be great to know a little bit more about how things work stateside.
Sure. So there is, once you're registered and you do need mental health services, there is an initial screening that basically looks at your baseline to see what kind of services you need. You may not know if you need a psychiatrist or a therapist, psychiatrist being able to dispense medication, therapist not. So our tool helps you determine what level of care you need. Once that's determined, you are able to select a provider based on language spoken, gender, subspecialty, etc. And then you work to look at scheduling time to determine, what schedule works best for you with the provider of your choice. So, as Kyle stated, we'll take this back and we'll confirm if indeed you're just matched overseas, or if you have any ability to use a wizard or a tool to locate a provider that suits your choosing.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So send us an email. We'll confirm that. We have actually seen, I was just looking at the stats. We've seen with the mental health service overseas, more than 100 patients have taken advantage of this service since we launched it about a year and a half ago, and with almost 200 sessions that have been completed. I will say this is something that I've mentioned before. We guys need to catch up. We're seeing about 2/3 of the folks taking advantage of that program are women, and only about 1/3 are men. And actually, the most of the patients who are taking part are out of Germany, with a sampling from other countries, but it's several dozen from Germany, which is fantastic. We just want more people to take advantage of that. So we'll get some clarity for everybody on exactly how that program works overseas. It is our newest offering, and we will be happy to provide that follow-up.
And to piggyback, Kyle, domestically, you've had about 644 members access care, which is really wonderful. And similarly with the gender split, it's 62% female, 38% male. I'm sorry, 69% female, 31 male, forgive me, which is, again, there's some disparity.
Mm-hmm.
And just a great stat. The time from the member's initial request for a session until the provider was able to connect to accept the session request was a little over 4 hours. So we're able to get back to the member very quickly, which is wonderful. And 81% of the folks were able to have a session using visual method on screen, and then the remaining 19% chose to do it via phone. So it's a great resource for members when they're in time of need and need for mental health care.
That's fantastic. And that turnaround time, especially, I get calls from members regularly trying to find an in-network provider in their area who accepts insurance and is accepting new patients and has availability sometime, because we're seeing long wait times, and it's everywhere, and it's across age groups and so forth, because a lot of the we see this more and more. A lot of the providers are single practitioners, and I'm in the Washington D.C. metro area. They'll get their paid. They don't have to deal with insurance if they don't want to, and so they'll forego the paperwork. So this is a great alternative for people. And as I said, I think something like 61% of all of our virtual visit claims are coming in now for mental health, and that's across all benefit areas. And so people prefer to do this virtually, and I love the option. We saw the visualization that you talked about, and now we're seeing people who are comfortable just doing the verbal, having the audio connection only, but the visual is always there as an option as well. That's a great option for them.
And if I could just add, it's really, I know we talked about the gender split. The utilization by age is really impressive. I mean, the lion's share falls between 31 and 45 years old, but we're seeing every age bracket, 13 to 17, a little over 3%, 18 to 26, about 19%. And then the next biggest chunk of folks are between 46 and 55. So we're seeing it across the board, even age bands 56 to 65 and 66 and older. So I'm really happy to see that, everybody's using the service, which is wonderful.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you said before about access for children, that as long as the authorization is there from the child and the parent, that service is available, because that is a place where we see get a lot of requests for assistance in locating providers.
Yep.
All right. We've had a couple of online questions come in.
Okay.
So some of them are about claims. So I'm going to show Joy's question. She has 2 questions. She said that she's filed overseas claims, and Aetna keeps asking for more details, and that can be often very hard to do.
Absolutely, Joy. And I think I saw a couple other folks ask about similar claim questions. And sometimes you don't need to translate claims when you send them through if they're from overseas. We'll handle that if we need to. But sometimes we may need more information, particularly like the diagnosis. And you don't need to send in a information about, like, here's the exact ICD-10 code or the CPT code. I don't expect you to know that. I'm not going to look it up myself in those cases. Our team is ready to do that, but we need to know, like, if it says doctor's visit, for instance, that's not enough for us to process the claim. Did you go in for an annual physical? Was it an earache? Was it follow-up after a surgery, prep for a surgery, broken arm? That sort of information may be what we need. We may also need to know exactly what did the doctor do. It was an exam with prescription. They set the broken arm. That may be some of the more information that we need. If it's a higher cost claim, maybe for an inpatient stay, we may be requesting some digital information. We have to follow the contract we have with OPM to submit to process the claims and make sure we have enough information to process it and process it properly. So good question. I will say I'm going to put this on Maddie and the team off screen. I'll hear them moan in the chat that we have going off on the side. If you have those specific questions, you can send them to outreach@afspa.org. Send that over. And any information you can provide, we'll send that over to our health operations research team, and they'll do some research and get back to you.
Yes. All right. We have a question from Facebook. He has asked, when a doctor from overseas prescribes medicine for you, how do you submit this prescription to be mailed to you when the prescription is not in English? They further said the country I live in does not allow the prescription to be processed. We went to, sorry, I have to be able to read it.
I got it. We went to a doctor in a different country than we got it. All right. Here's, first of all, thank you for joining us again. I recognize your name from a previous AFSPA Live. This is a tricky one. The only way that you can fill a prescription by mail through the Express Scripts home delivery pharmacy is if the prescription was written by a U.S. licensed physician. That is an FDA requirement to send the drugs through the mail. I'm guessing, based on what you said here, that may not be the case. We cannot, through the home delivery pharmacy, fill scripts by anyone other than U.S. licensed physicians. And so it may be something where a visit to a local provider needs to be done. There may be an opportunity, depending on what country you're in, to connect with a V-Health provider and talk through the same symptoms. This may be something where you may need to go to a local provider, given that you're overseas, and go through the prescription process there to have it filled at a local pharmacy, and then can submit it. The drug claim, copy the prescription, copy of the receipt from the pharmacy, submit it, we'll process it, same as we would an overseas medical claim at 90%. So feel free to follow up with us. If there's more details that you don't want to share publicly, we can provide some additional guidance.
Yep. And again, if you want to follow up anything, it's outreach@afspa.org. Email that and we will get it handled. We have a question from KH. They have asked, within how much time after services does the medical claim need to be filed? And is it the same amount of time for telehealth?
Okay, so this is a great question. This is standard across all federal employee health benefits programs. You must file your claim by December 31st of the year after you receive the services. So if you got services today on March 30th, you need to file that claim by December 31st of 2024. I did just check what year it was. That was the glance to the side. And that is the same. Now, telehealth, I wonder, Lisa, you mentioned earlier that it's 100% for coverage. So is there any claims process that involves the member when it comes to Teledoc?
No. All services are zero cost to the member.
So no paperwork on the front end and no paperwork on the back end.
Correct. However, I will call it paperwork because, again, it's the most important thing you do. Register. But that is really minor in the grand scheme of things.
Register and complete the health history. So it's ready. When you need it, you're ready to go. Got it. But then let the plan and Teledoc will take care of the payment on that.
That's correct. Yeah. That's correct. Zero cost share to the member for all 4 services.
Fantastic.
Cage asked another question. I'm going to go ahead and read it. If someone talks to any mental health professional without any resulting diagnosis, will it affect their medical clearance?
So assume we're talking about the medical clearance process with the Department of State. So here's what I will say about that. Your medical records for visits either through telehealth, in person, telemedicine, etc., with providers are confidential. They are protected by HIPAA. That information is not available to your employer directly. So that is where I will stop. I can't speak on the medical clearance process. So I will pause my explanation there, but I will just say that the information that comes through on any claims through the Foreign Service Benefit Plan, that information is not available to the Bureau of Medical Services, the Department of State, or anybody else's employer. That was we'll go back to HIPAA protections back into the 90s when those first came into effect and even earlier, but that information is not available. So I won't answer yes or no on your question, but I'll let you go with that information and take it to the end.
All right. Joy has asked a question. Oh, hold on. Can a Teledoc physician write a prescription for Express Scripts?
This is a great question. Lisa, can you talk a little bit about the prescription process and sort of what typically comes out of that with visits through Teledoc?
Sure. If deemed medically necessary, a provider can write a prescription, and the prescription will be essentially written and dispensed to the pharmacy that you choose. So you, in your profile, are able to indicate where you'd like the prescription to be sent to. And again, if it's medically necessary. And that prescription can be written for general medical, mental health, or dermatology. So it'll automatically go. And another point to caution, if you travel, you need to change the pharmacy because your profile will have your, wherever you set up your profile to be for that pharmacy. And again, another, experience, a personal experience. I was leaving my home in New Jersey. I was driving to somewhere in Pennsylvania, and I actually had my telehealth visit on the phone in the car. And I located the Pennsylvania pharmacy. And by the time I got to my destination, the prescription, was there. But it would have been horrible if my prescription was sitting back at home in New Jersey. So, yes.
That is a really great point. I've done this. I've done the same myself when I was traveling to Arizona one time and forgot my prescription. I got up to the counter and said, "Is it ready?" It'd been 4 or 5 hours. They said, "Yeah, it is in Virginia." Had a little bit longer wait at that point. Yeah.
And just another point to reference, not only can we dispense for a condition or an urgent diagnosis, we can dispense for a short-term refill on a maintenance medication. So if you find yourself, on a Sunday and you took your last pill on a Saturday for your blood pressure, we can dispense a short fill for that.
So, and I'll just add, Joy, I think, a lot of the prescriptions that do come out, I think, of teledoc visits, at least on the general medicine side, tend to be for acute conditions. Is that
Correct?
yeah?
Correct. Yep. Correct.
Rather than ongoing maintenance medications, which you might prefer to get through home delivery from Express Scripts. So maybe a little bit of a different need that we're seeing.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback, Kyle, folks on the phone, last month, the common themes that we wrote prescriptions for were upper respiratory infections, sinusitis, cystitis, laryngitis, cough, bronchitis. So, really that was the lion's share. No maintenance drugs. So that's a good thing. They're using it, the way they should be.
Absolutely.
All right. We have a couple more questions that came in. Someone has asked, how many mental health visits are permitted with V-Health overseas?
Yeah, Lisa, you mentioned this earlier. You
Sure.
go through the screening and it results in. Please.
There's 6 visits that you're entitled to overseas. Domestically, there isn't a limit, but when you are traveling, it will be 6 visits.
Yeah, and I think there is a process. I've heard if needed, if the 6 you might go through a screening process again if there's a different need that presents later in the year, perhaps. So, okay. Any other questions we've received, Maddie?
Yes, we have 2 more. Sun has asked, what are the options for clients seeking overseas virtual mental health counseling? If not going through telehealth, can we reach out to any company or individual offering such services?
It's a good question. So you do have the option of going through V-Health as we've discussed, but otherwise, yes, you can reach out to anybody who is qualified to provide the treatment you're seeking. And this goes beyond mental health services. Any service who's qualified to provide those services and can provide a claim document for you to submit to us if you're looking for to claim benefits for that. It could be somebody in the United States. It could be somebody overseas. It could be an in-person visit. It could be a virtual visit. There are groups out there that in some cases specialize in American expats, particularly for mental health needs. And typically what we need on there, when you submit something, is just the date of the service, the name and address of the provider, the date of the services provided. So 45-minute counseling session, and it could be in person or via virtual visit, and the cost, as well as your information and your ID number and so forth. So that's the information that we need to come through, laid out in the plan brochure. But those are the basic elements we need on any claim that comes through.
All right.
And typically, I should also add the reason for the visit. So it may be something like depression, anxiety, anything like that, that typically would be included on there. It may be something that you could add in notes when you're submitting the claim. Just it gives us enough information to process the claim.
All right. Yes, I believe that is all of our live questions. Now, right. I do know that we did have one submitted, and I just wanted to make sure we didn't leave this one out. So someone has asked, my experience with medical practitioners is that they generally cannot practice medicine to include consults outside of the states they are licensed in. How does AFSPA get around that?
Very sneakily. No, this is being recorded, isn't it? Actually, Lisa, I'll ask you to address this when it comes to sort of the nationwide, and we'll talk domestically, the nationwide access that Teledoc offers.
Sure. So we have providers in all 50 states, and each state that you would need a service from, the provider would board certified in that state. So like I use my example, I live in New Jersey, but I happen to be needing service in Pennsylvania. The service would be provided by a board certified physician in the state of Pennsylvania. And that happens everywhere you go. So you'll always have somebody boarded in the state that you're calling from. And you'll notice when you request the consult, it's one of the early questions that's asked, where are you going to need this service? And that's why it's our requirement.
Fantastic. And I'll just add, otherwise, if for some folks who have ongoing relationships when they're outside of their home. Maybe it's for mental health, maybe it's for a quick check-in for chronic condition or something like that. The provider, there have been some emergency procedures in place during the COVID pandemic.
Mhm.
There may be some changes coming to law. They're not in place just yet. But there may be, I heard some things last week at a conference, but anyway, the other thing is sort of the willingness of the provider to continue providing ongoing care, even when you may be outside the jurisdiction which they're licensed. We can't determine that for the provider or for you, but there are some instances where that has been the case. And sometimes those providers are willing to provide that even when you're overseas.
All right. Just one last question before we wrap up. I was even thinking this question. How does that work if you are overseas, because you're not technically in a state when it comes to doctor licensing?
Sure. So that's not that's not something that we can do. We have the partnership with V-Health for that reason, to provide access overseas. So you're either looking at a local provider or you're looking at again, finding that relationship. We are aware of some groups out there like the Truman Group based out of Minnesota, but they've got providers worldwide, and others who are willing to provide that care. And some individual providers have been willing to provide it ongoing when someone's going overseas for an assignment, maybe coming back occasionally and so forth. But really the access to virtual care has opened things up quite a bit. But that is a decision of the individual provider and what they feel they can do.
Okay. Sorry, we just had another question come in. So a U.S. board certified physician working in another country can send prescriptions to Express Scripts?
I want to be clear. It's a U.S. licensed physician. So they have to have a license from the that is valid within the United States, that will allow Express Scripts to fill the prescription and send it through the mail. And that is a requirement of the FDA, to send it through the postal service.
All right. This has been a great discussion today. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we will be back next month, of course, last Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern. If you're not tired of us, you can find our latest podcast episodes on whatever listening service you use. They'll also be on YouTube at AFSPA Cares. And you can keep up with us on social media. All of our ats are AFSPA Cares. So thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Lisa.
And I'll add a quick plug for our upcoming podcast episode, which is with one of Lisa's colleagues from Telehealth. We're doing, this may be interesting to some, others may want to avoid it, but is COVID-19 3 years later, and talking about the effects on public health and the effects on sort of the revolution we've seen in the virtual space for telehealth and telemedicine. So it's a fantastic discussion. I recorded it yesterday with someone who was actually in China in January 2020, is now based in Canada. So look for that. Again, if you have questions about claims or anything else, send those to Outreach. Our job at AFSPA is to advocate on your behalf when there are questions or issues that come up. So send those to us, outreach@afspa.org. Sorry to interrupt. I was just so excited about this next podcast episode. But with that, we'll say goodbye. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our broadcast. Join us again the last Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, don't forget to look for AFSPA Cares on all of our social media channels: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.